everyone. I'm Charna Davis-Wiese. Welcome to UCF Profiles. So many people think we're so lucky to live in paradise. And Central Florida is known for, pardon the cliche, but sun and fun. But the entire state is becoming a high technology hub. That's our topic today. Joining me is Randy Berridge. He's the president of the High Tech Corridor Council. That's a mouthful.
It is, Charna. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. We were talking about this the first time we met, that I don't think people realize the high-tech business that's here. Even my own brother, who is a bioenvironmental engineer, and I was telling him how what was going on with Creole and the solar energy and all this, and he's like, oh, it's Central Florida? I don't think the average person knows what is so important about this area in high tech.
Well, Charna, I think the folks that you just described would certainly recognize the University of Central Florida, and they'd recognize the University of South Florida, and of course the University of Florida. Those are the three universities that make up our Florida High Tech Corridor Council. So on behalf of UCF President John Hitt and USF President Judy Genshaft and UF President Bernie Machen, thank you for the opportunity to share. You've got the sixth largest university in the country, the fifth largest, and by some reports the seventh or eighth in terms of USF. So you have the largest universities in the country coming together with a mission to attract, retain, and grow high-tech industry and the workforce to support it. So the projects that we've done, thanks to these three great leaders, the economic development organizations that we partner with, and the workforce boards, center and focus around that mission. We invest in research projects with companies, and we invest in marketing projects with economic development organizations. And I think most important, we invest in workforce projects with our workforce boards and our community colleges in our region.
You're like a matchmaker.
We are. We really are.
You put together the research, the educational side, and the business side.
If you had Charna Davis-Wiese Enterprises, for instance, and you were a small high-tech company.
That is the name of my business. How did you know that?
Well, if you'd like to do a research project, seriously, our three universities utilize our Florida High Tech Corridor Council resources to fund research projects. We've done 715 projects in our first 10 years. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. And we've invested our money, about $48 million, in those projects. The companies have put about $103 million on the table for those projects. So we have a 2-to-1 match to show the success of this. We have literally invested $150 million with 275 companies in our first 10 years.
Let's talk about the history of it and how it all came about.
Sure.
In the very, very beginning, 10 years ago, I bet that nobody could have guessed how big this became.
Well, John Hitt gets the credit. UCF President John Hitt. He would tell you if he were here doing this interview, I'm sure your viewers would appreciate. It hit him in a shower one day that everything that we did as a team to save a $1.4 billion expansion of an AT&T facility that was in the Central Florida area, everything we did to keep that facility and the operations and the employees there, that operation from going offshore, we were successful in keeping it here. We put together a team to do that. But if John were here, he would tell you that everything we did was reactive. And it was his vision, along with then USF President Betty Castor. Betty had been a commissioner of education in our great state before becoming president of USF. It was their combined vision that we figure out a way to do it on a proactive basis. So we used the leverage of then a small company called AT&T, USF and UCF, to approach the legislature and the first year get a modicum of funding to basically invest in research with companies that needed this research from our then two universities. Just in the last 2 years, we added the University of Florida to this great council.
And when that was first suggested, the people at USF, University of South Florida, were not really on board. Weren't they a little afraid that UF would come in as the giant and maybe take over a little bit? And there was a little bit of, they were almost a little bit cautious about having UF become part of this, but probably wouldn't want them part of another one.
Well, part of the concern on some of the folks on the western end of the corridor was that UF can literally go anywhere they want to in the state, and part of the concern was that they might impose on their rabid bull gator associates and do the research. And the conversations we had went something like, there's not a Berlin Wall around Alachua County. They can literally go anywhere that they want to, and they are a great research university. But so is USF, and so is UCF.
So it really has not been a problem.
It has not been a problem. In fact, it's been a definite addition, because if you think about it, though there are high-tech companies in Alachua and Putnam counties, the 2 counties that we added, we're now 23 counties in the central part of the state. When you think in terms of the money that they've added to help the high-tech companies in this region, there's, by some reports, 75% of the high-tech companies in Florida are in the central part of the state, in our corridor.
Closer to a bigger city.
Closer to a bigger
Orlando
city.
or
Right.
Tampa, not necessarily
Right. And
Gainesville.
so you have some great high-tech companies certainly in Alachua County, but the bulk of the high-tech companies in the state are in this corridor, and UF wanted to be part of that. University of Florida, Dean Pramod Kargankar gets the credit. He said, there's no way that UF can stay in the top 20 engineering colleges in the country by their estimate, nor have any chance of getting in the top 10 if they don't focus on doing applied research with companies. And so the corridor represented a good opportunity for them to do that and partner with companies in our region, and that's what they've done.
Besides that, it's business, because if you have a business, no matter how fabulous the idea or how well-funded you are, how great the research is, you have to have, especially in high tech, trained people, educated people to work there.
Well, sticking with the Charna Davis Weese Technologies company, if you scope a project out at about $200,000, for the time involved and the supplies and equipment involved, though we'd rather meet you a third of the way and you put 2/3 of the funds on the table, we'll actually meet you halfway. Now, you're a struggling startup high-tech company. You have some idea what you've got to sell to generate $100,000 to your bottom line. We'll put that on the table if you, in fact, will then retain our students, our professors, and we'll do the research for you.
It's symbiotic. It's perfect. It's win-win for everybody.
In fact, as I shared with you before we went on, last year a co-ed came up to me and said, I figured this out. This is really a retention program. And I said, well, go to the head of the class, because it is. We're giving you a meaningful research experience with a great high-tech CEO. And the hope is that they'll like your work, and when you graduate UCF, USF, or UF, they will hire you to come work for their company.
You'll stay here in Florida.
You'll stay here in Florida. As we also chatted, about 25% of the cost of the tuition is borne by the student or their family or their loans, etc. Literally 75% of the cost is borne by the state and the region and the university. So everything that we can do to keep these wonderfully trained, very, very competent, very intelligent students to stay in our region, more better for us. That's what we should be doing.
What are the kinds of companies? Because I know in doing the research and looking about this, I read that there is a lot of research programs that actually turned into bankable businesses, and it's making the whole region a high-tech, I used to say corridor, but what are the kind of things? We've all heard of the solar energy. What are some of the other things that
Let me give you a couple examples. We mirror the technologies and the competencies of the 3 universities. So UCF in the Metro Orlando area would be known for its lasers and optics. It's CREOL, the Center for Research and Education in Optics and Laser. That's a mouthful. Say that time.
Isn't that one of the most highly recognized in the world?
They are number 2 by an industry rating, going to number 1. So yes, an awesome rating for a school. The university's only been there 40 years, so CREOL has been there for far less than that. So what they've done in that very short period of time. But the reach out that they've done is with small companies that they've helped start as well as that they've helped grow. About 7 years ago, Tom O'Neill, who was part of that CREOL organization under the tutelage of Dr. M.J. Swallow, VP of Research at UCF, Tom had the idea of creating an incubator. And MJ said, well, how are you going to do that? Well, if you'll give me some money and Randy will give me some money from the high-tech corridor, I'll find some more. And literally, that's how it started. They started a technology incubator at UCF.
Meaning?
And in the first 5 years, they went from nothing to number 1 in the country. And their business is to help start businesses and help businesses grow.
So you incubate the business.
So you incubate the business, exactly.
So it's actually from the actual seeds and the thought of it to the funding of it to the actual making of the business.
And 700 jobs and average payroll 60,000. I would say they've done a pretty good job. They've now created about 5 more high-tech incubators in the metropolitan area. USF has done the same. Of course, UF has had incubators for far longer than USF and UCF. So the idea is that these universities are using these limited resources to help startup companies, help them help them grow. And the best thing that they do, I would submit, is they have a great training program, a great workforce training program for not only the CEO and the CFO and those kind of folks, but for anyone who's part of that company. That's a regimen that the university puts them through. And I think that's the best measure of their success, that their companies have been more successful in surviving than non-incubated companies.
Talking about Creole and the optics and the lasers, for the person watching, what does that mean? What kind of products, what kind of business, where is that used?
Well, a good friend of mine who was part of the genesis of the corridor, he was part of the saving of this $1.4 billion investment from going offshore. Bob Cook is his name. He would look to some of your viewers as a pretty decent golfer at about a 10 handicap, develop back problems. And through research in terms of what to do with it, his doctor and his specialist finally said, we need you to go to this particular doctor in Tampa, and the work on his back was done with a laser. You think in terms of lasers, perhaps, that shoot things out of the sky, and certainly those things are around. I probably can't talk about it on your show, but the laser technologies that you have in Central Florida, they help many industries. I once ran an operation that had lasers in it that cut little holes in glass, and those were perforations that were split, and those devices that came off of a glass substrate. You have an opportunity, I think, to, and in fact, I would extend that invitation. Give the folks at Creole a call and learn more about it. Eric Van Strylen would love to have you call. Tom O'Neill on 407-882-1120. I'm sure would take your call. And
go ahead, guys. Call and book it for me.
Right.
How about the optics? What kind of use is that for?
It is really, again, the idea of research in the transmission of data, and you have some of the best researchers in the world at UCF in that arena. We focus on optics and lasers and Creole, but with the announcement of the medical college and the announcement of the Burnham Institute in this metro area, you're going to see a major emphasis on biotech and life sciences. Of course, you have that with USF, with the Moffitt Center, with the College of Medicine at USF. A major medical device manufacturing effort and companies in the Tampa Bay area. You ask about what are some of the other technologies. You have microelectronics still in this area. You've mentioned lasers and optics. We've mentioned the life sciences. You've got this wonderful organization here in the Brevard County area that's looking at solar energy and renewable energy sources, major research facility. In fact, I passed it coming in today. You did as well.
It's right around the corner.
Right around the corner. There's 7 major technologies we focus on, and probably 5 others that we're looking at, including agritech.
We'll talk about that as soon as we come back. We're talking with Randy Berridge, president of the High Tech Corridor Council, and we were starting to talk about all the different high-tech industry that's here in Central Florida. You mentioned the agribusiness, and I guess people think here in terms of theme park world, you think of going through that land exhibit at Disney and seeing all the different ways that you could help preserve crops and grow crops, and maybe farmers in the future won't be so terribly dependent on how climate and things like that. That could probably really help them, different ways to protect their crops as well.
When we added the University of Florida to the corridor 2 years ago and provided them the opportunity to name a couple of members to our council, they added Carrie Herndon. You may not have heard of Herndon's bromeliads, but they're a major research operation in Apopka. and they're now doing some work with a top researcher at UCF in terms of tobacco leaves. It is really interesting. But let me circle back, if I may, to one item.
Sure.
MJ Swallow, VP of Research at UCF and a good friend. His phone number, if you'd like to make a note, is 407-823. And if you look at your dial pad, 823 is UCF on the dial pad. So 823
Yes.
5538. Now that'll get you Doty.
You got it.
And if you give those folks a call, I'm sure that MJ, who started CREOL, you need to understand the acronym, the Center for Research and Education in Optics and Lasers, CREOL, that MJ is Cajun. So you now have a piece of history, and you have a good guy, and I'm sure if you give him a call, he will get someone from CREOL to come on your show for you.
Or at the very least, some good jambalaya.
That's true. That's true.
And some of the other things, how about the modeling and simulation industry? That's big here too, isn't
Russ
it?
Houck, you need to get on your show. He is the executive director of the National Center, and Russ is also the mayor of Altamont Springs. So he represents hundreds of companies in the modeling, simulation, and training arena.
And if I'm right, that's 25% of the $10 billion tech industry in the state is modeling and simulation.
It is huge because of those companies that are part of his association, and even more significantly, it's the military that's here. You have every branch of the U.S. military here in the Metro Orlando area, focusing on training the soldier of the future.
And that would be almost like digital graphics, making digital films. Is that what modeling and simulation is for training?
It's the games that your kids and mine would be familiar with. It's electronic arts that are headquartered here in the metro area. Madden football. It's the gaming industry, but it's on the side of how do you fly planes and how do you drive tanks and how do you simulate warfare conditions, and how do you help first responders react to situations of trying to enter a facility when you're not quite sure in terms of either people or in terms of fire or gas or other things they might confront. Modeling, simulation, and training industry is really a significant one
also, here. I noticed that Army contracts in Central Florida, I'm looking at my notes, $600 million.
And that's just the Army. I think the total impact of all the services would be in the multi-billion range in terms of what it means, what it means to this economy in the central part of the state.
So now we know, those of us who have lived here a long time, who it is on I-4.
That's true.
Who's in all these cars? Who are these people? But it's really amazing how it has blossomed in 10 years. I bet when you guys first started this 10 years ago, did you have any clue that it would become so big so fast?
I have to harken back to John and Betty Castor and now Judy Genshaft and Bernie Matchin, and John Hitt, of course, at UCF. And their goal was to leverage the strength and the resources of the three universities to try to make a difference. And no, I think our original goal was part of John's creed, and that is number one, metropolitan research partnering university. So the things that we do come under the research, obviously, and they come under the partnering aspect. We linked together some 24 economic development organizations across the region, including Linda Weatherman's Space Coast EDC here in the Brevard area, Ray Gilley in the Metro Orlando area, and Stu Rogel over in the Tampa Bay area, just to name three. And we partnered together on trade shows and conferences and advertising to not only tell ourselves and our region and our state and the country, but the world that this is a high-tech region. It's interesting. These are the same folks that on any given day may be competing for a project, one of these high-tech companies we've talked about. But in our meetings, our creed is you leave your logo and your ego at the door. And you come in and figure out ways that you can help promote this region as a high-tech region. And I would submit in 10 years we've done a pretty good job of that.
Unbelievable. Talking about the workforce, we touched on it a little bit before. That is, you have to have it. That's the most important thing to keep it going, to have people to actually do this.
Our mission statement in the Florida legislature in 1996, create and implement a model to attract, retain, and grow high-tech industry. And when we incorporated that first year, I would truly submit wisely added and the workforce to support it. Because you can't have the other without the workforce.
Because this is a workforce that has to be specially trained.
And not just baccalaureate or graduate or doctoral level graduates. The companies involved would tell you, yes, they need those, of course. But they also need the technicians, highly trained technicians and operators to run their business. And literally about 8 years ago, that came to the fore that it's great that you're doing this research for us and helping fund research. It's great that you're helping us market the region as a high-tech region. But you got to understand, we can't get the highly trained technicians and operators that we need, and give those folks a chance if they get an associate degree, for instance, from one of our community colleges.
You do partner with community colleges
Absolutely.
as well.
All 14, there are 14 in the region, starting here in the backyard of where we are, Brevard Community College. And Tom Gamble, God rest his soul, passed away a few months ago, as you know. His idea, when we offered him funding for a technician degree, said, I really need funding to help recertify the aerospace technician recertification program. Now think about that. They're recognized throughout the U.S. as having one of the best recertification programs for aerospace technicians. Tom's vision was, well, if you're going to have this recertification program, you've got to recertify it. You've got to have everything involved to make sure that program is current.
It has to be up to date.
Otherwise, you wouldn't stay number one in the country in that category. So we help fund that for Tom, and I think fondly of him.
And there's also a concern and a look ahead to the future about the future workforce. You reach out to children as well and teachers.
Well, we came up with about 8 technician degrees, certificate programs, and associate degrees, and a fellow at Valencia Community College said, well, it's great we got this new associate degree, but I can't get the students to go into it.
They don't know about it.
And he said one more thing. If you don't focus in the 5th and 6th and 7th grades a student's attention on the importance of staying with math and science, you're going to lose them. So look to some programs that you can have in that arena to start keeping students focused on math and the importance of math and science. So Dr. Jeff Bendel spends half his time now teaching physics at UCF, the other half working for the Carter, and Vicki Morelli. Both these folks worked at a major research lab at Aguirre Semiconductor. They had the idea of creating a tech camp, translation, a field trip for middle and high school teachers, and in some of their programs, students. And the idea is we'd bring you in for a 2-day camp. We would treat you with respect that you were due. We would feed you breakfast. We would feed you at breaks. We would feed you at lunch. You're going to gain 10 pounds on these 2 days in this program. But the real idea was to show you what it's like to work in a high-tech company. And with that, then, you would take those materials that we provide and you would take it back to your classrooms. So Peg Smith, who's superintendent of schools for Volusia County, we're sitting here, Charna. She would tell you that the success of the 2 camps that we did in Volusia County, that we touched 65,000 students with that program designed to impress on them the importance of math and science. We put 1,400 math and science teachers through these camps. A few counselors as well, but the counselor program can only be a 1-day program. The teachers is a 2-day program. You need to ask me why.
Why?
Counselors can't sit still that long. So the program is really designed for teachers. Give them a chance to see what it's like to work in a high-tech company. We've taken them to the Daytona 500 behind the scenes so they can see what the technicians do. We've taken them to Disney. We've taken them to Universal Studios behind the scenes so they can see what the technicians do. They can get an understanding of what the technician does to earn a very good living. And in our case, we fund it because we want the technician to have the ability to go on and get the baccalaureate should they choose to do so.
Now you have some anecdotes to show not only how well you've done here, but the people in the high-tech industry throughout the country recognize what's going on here and want to copy it.
Well, we're a group of about 600 volunteers that work on these research, marketing, and workforce projects. These folks come to us with an idea, either research, marketing, or workforce. They bring part of the resources. They bring all the volunteers. They bring the idea, and we help fund it. That model has worked for us for 10 years, and as I shared with you before we went on, receiving a call from a member of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, where her assignment was to create a high-tech region around Syracuse, New York, and she and her team chose the corridor as the model. That's kind of good.
That's amazing.
A call from the attorney for the Joint Committee, House and Senate, Economic Development Committee for the state of Colorado. And to be able to do a 3-hour interview with him to showcase how we do things in these 23 counties in the central part of Florida That's a nice accolade. That's something that you like to hear, and of course you like to share that. The son of Ina Jimenez, the founder of one of the largest private universities in Puerto Rico. When you get a call from him saying, I'd like you to come to Puerto Rico. I'd like you to meet with my team and 2 of our peer universities in the central part of Puerto Rico and 3 of our mayors. And I'd like to share with you what your volunteer team does, because we'd like to set up a high-tech region in the central part of Puerto Rico.
Imitation is the sincerest form
It
of
is.
flattery, and who knows where we're going to be 10 years from now. So we'll have to make a date. 10 years from now, you come back.
I would love to. We'll get MJ Swallow here in the
We
meantime.
will. It sounds like I've got a whole year's worth of shows just from you. Thank you, Randy, so much for joining us and letting us know how incredibly unique and vital the high-tech industry here is in Central Florida.
Charna, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm Charna Davis-Wiese. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next time for UCF Profiles.